All right, welcome back to the Discovering Eden podcast. My name is Brandon,
And I'm Jonathan.
and this week is kindness.
What a fun word.
How kind? We're not going to do this again. Anyway,
That was very unkind of you.
especially coming into these next two discussions that we'll have, kindness and goodness, often are very similar, like similarly tied to one another.
Sure.
So trying to separate the two and say this is kindness and this is goodness is going to be an interesting challenge. But at the same time, I hope that you guys will get a lot from this episode, and we'll get into the prayer.
All right. Here we go. Dear Lord, we just thank you for this time that we get to come together every Sunday to, I guess Monday is when everybody sees the video, but to have these discussions, to share our faith, and to hopefully be a light to those who are watching. God, as we engage in this discussion, we just pray that we're actively pursuing what you want us to speak about, and that anything that isn't from you, Lord, is falls to the ground and is forgotten. Lord, we thank you again for this time, and we just ask that you you bless us in this conversation. Amen.
Man. So kindness.
Oh, bummer.
We'll get to the bumper. Actually, we'll go to the bumper right. Almost forgot about the bumper. But he didn't.
I never forget about my one true love.
You want true love. Okay.
The bumper.
The bumper. Speaking of the bumper. All right. So kindness. Like I was talking about earlier, kindness, goodness, they have a lot in common,
Yeah.
yet also is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to get right into it with kind of my definition
Okay.
or whatever that I'm thinking of for kindness. And we'll kind of dive a little bit deeper into why I chose what I chose a little bit
Okay.
later. So my definition, if I were to define kindness, which is kind of hard to define,
Sure.
I would say it is, I guess put simply, it's like the act of compassion on one another, or it's helping of your own volition to those around you. Not
Sure.
expecting anything.
You could almost use it as
Yeah.
like, it's not exactly like charity, but that
Yeah.
same kind of idea where it's done out of goodness of your heart.
It's like the sympathy, empathy, all that kind of athese. But that's kind of what I have in mind for what kindness is.
Sure.
And that would be like, I guess, my definition.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, I think it'd be relatively similar. One thing that I was kind of, going back and forth with this week as I was thinking of my definition, is again, you get this idea of kindness and then niceness. And again, I kind of go back to that idea of what we talked about with love a couple weeks ago, where they're similar, and you have all these different definitions where I guess, they could technically be synonyms for each other, but I think there's something deeper with kindness versus niceness. And again, I think it really ties into that genuine compassion, that desire to help people of your own volition. I think that's definitely part of it. But interestingly enough, I was talking to one of my coworkers at work, and he kind of made the argument, and I thought it was really good, so I wanted to share it. Is that, being nice is an action, whereas being kind is more of a habit. It's something that you develop over time.
It's something you do of your own volition.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I really like that distinction of one's just an action. It's like a one and done. Like, oh, you could, be nice to
yeah.
someone, but being kind to someone, being kind in general is it's a habit.
Being kind is more of an adjective
Yeah.
that describes.
Yeah.
Whereas being nice, I mean, it could be an adjective, but it's almost a temporal adjective.
Yeah. And so I thought that was really good. And I wanted to share it as kind of we work out our own definitions because I think it's one of those things that it's important to note that distinction there. So again, kind of my definition would fall very similar in line with yours. Much deeper than, kind of that surface level of, oh, he's just a nice guy sort of thing.
And I don't know. Maybe I'll put this in it if I edit correctly or whatever. Whenever I see nice guy, now obviously I'm a geology major, so that's what I majored in school. So I think of The Rock nice. So insert rock. Bang. That's a nice rock.
And if you can't figure out the editing, you're just going to have a funny joke.
Congratulations, you get a funny joke. Anyway.
You'll get a funny joke no matter what.
Yeah.
It'll just be a different...
Either we look ridiculous because nothing's there.
Or we look ridiculous because there is something there.
Woo-hoo.
So really, we're going to look ridiculous.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, now it's time for my favorite segment of the show, the Merriam-Webster discussion. They impressed me last week.
Yeah.
With their definition, and I think they impressed you too.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised at how deep that patient went.
Because every other definition was very surface level. Not wrong, but surface level.
Yeah.
So I've got it pulled up for kindness. I haven't looked at it yet. Okay, it's very similar to how they had patience.
Awesome.
So I'll read what they have for kindness, and then I think I'm going to jump to kind in there because they have that linked, and I just want to see if it's a little deeper. So what they have is, for kindness, the quality or state of being kind, or a kind deed or favor, which I hate both of those definitions.
You can't use the...
So I'm gonna switch to kind.
Yeah.
And they've got a couple definitions there. So, of a sympathetic or helpful nature, of a forbearing nature, arising from or characterized by sympathy or forbearance, of a kind to give pleasure or relief. So, I don't necessarily hate the first three definitions they gave. I'm not sure how I feel about the last one. Of a kind to give pleasure or relief. And they use the example of cooled by a kind breeze. That sounds stupid to me.
I mean, relief makes sense a little bit more than pleasure.
Yeah. I do like...
Why is the only thing I can think of with pleasure? It's a kind bar.
So that's what they meant.
Pleasure. Pleasure.
But I don't hate the other definitions as much as I thought I was going to.
Again, it goes toward the sympathy aspect. Which, again, kind of surprises me a little bit. But, again, maybe it shouldn't surprise me as much. Because how else do you define kind? Besides... Yeah. I'm glad it didn't say anything about nicety or...
Yeah, I mean, do you want me to look up the definition, what they use for nice, too?
Sure.
See what they say. Polite or kind, pleasing or agreeable, appropriate, fitting, well executed, socially acceptable, virtuous, respectable. So obviously they throw kind in there as a synonym sort of deal. But again, I agree with a lot of what they're saying here. It's socially acceptable, appropriate, I feel again, those are all things their actions. You can, put on the mask of being a nice person and be socially acceptable and then, go home and not be,
Or even be a descriptor as well.
Sure.
Oh, that's a nice suit.
Sure. Again, I think it goes, with that, using it as a synonym for kind, kindness is much deeper than that.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily hate what they have here.
Yeah.
So good job, Merriam-Webster. You have now surprised me in 2 weeks in a row. Will we go for 3?
When we talk about goodness, what's good? What's up?
All right.
That's the Urban Dictionary. Look at that. Not kidding.
So I know you mentioned wanting to do this distinction between kindness and goodness. If you want to lead off with that a little bit.
Yeah. So obviously, and I was thinking about both a character for kind and for good, and there's literally in the title of of the person that I wanted to do for kind is called the Good Samaritan.
Okay, it was who I was thinking
Yeah.
when you mentioned it. Yeah, I figured, but
So obviously, and I'll go into what I think good is, because I thought of it along the same kind of
sure.
time that I thought of kind. I'll give you a little brief preview. So to me, goodness is almost an embodiment of holiness
That's good.
to go alongside of what good means, especially when when I think of this, I refer to like the book of Genesis, right at the beginning, Genesis 1.
Sure.
And God saw that it was good. Or also known like another descriptor is perfect. So what's that? It's holy. This is holy. It's good. Now, obviously, good has a lot of definitions as well. Like even personally for me, it's like what's good is it's kind of well, it's like I don't know what's good. Well, good is good. Like I don't know. Like as a descriptor, it's not amazing, which is up here. It's not deplorable, which is down
Sure.
here. It's somewhere in between. It's kind of the meh. It's all right. Which is not necessarily the same as taking more of a biblical stance on what is good.
Sure.
What is good, pleasing, perfect, that kind of thing. So, obviously, again, this goes to more of the descriptors. Kind of like you were saying with nice and kind. One is an outplay of the other, but in a different way.
Yeah.
So obviously for nice, it's more of a one-time, oh, I'm nice in this moment, whatever. Good, and the outplay of being good is being kind, which again ties into love, kind of the fruit of the spirit, everything pouring out from love. From that you get kindness, patience, faithfulness,
Right.
all that kind of stuff. So it's an outpouring of a common root.
Right.
So it's kind of a state of mind or a state of being, if you want to call it that. Maybe that's not the best way of putting it, but anyway, that's that. And then I already said Good Samaritan.
Yeah.
As my character doesn't have a name because it's a parable.
Right.
One of Jesus's stories is he's talking about this Good Samaritan. For those who don't know, Samaritans, Jews, not on the greatest of terms.
Like oil and water.
Oil and water, definitely. And basically, there's this guy on the road from to Jerusalem from Jericho.
Yeah.
I've been in that general vicinity where that road is. It's like basically a valley, and it's like a deep valley where you can easily get jumped. So this other guy gets jumped, basically left for dead. And this Good Samaritan helps him. Brings him to an inn, pays for him to get help and all of his needs met, goes the extra mile, for all of that kind of thing. And it's interesting because the Good Samaritan, I feel like is something a lot of people know, even if they aren't associated with the church. Or if they don't know it, they've heard at least of the Good Samaritan. Kind of like David and Goliath, like people know what David and Goliath is. But the same, I think, can be said for Good Samaritan. It's not just because of like Samaritan's Purse or other different things like that.
Sure.
And yeah, for being kind, like it's that sympathy, and what I think Jesus would refer to as like Jews saw Samaritans as like their enemies.
Yeah.
So being able to even do that for an enemy, to go the extra mile, take the cloak off your back, and give it to another. Again, goes with Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. I know that's kind of the series we're kind of going through right now for our church that we're a part of, but it reminds me a lot of that's the go the extra mile, all those kind of things. And for those who want to take a deeper look at like the Good Samaritan, read it for yourself. It's Luke 10, and you'll find it in Luke chapter 10. Yeah. What verses exactly? Just read the whole chapter. You gain a little bit of insight, and that Sermon on the Mount is the book of Matthew.
Right.
I think it's like chapter 3 to chapter 5, somewhere around those lines. But also, really good read. Check it out. Anyway, that's the character I selected. Who did you select?
Well, it's a good thing I didn't choose the Good Samaritan, because it definitely did happen in my mind. Like, that was the first one that popped in my mind. And I said, what would Brandon do? Well, he wouldn't do the one that pops immediately to mind like he did. So I tried to go a little more. I don't know if it's necessarily unique. But so I went with the character from the book of Joshua, specifically Rahab.
Okay. I also
you thought of Rahab. Yeah.
I also thought of Rahab.
Yeah. So again, I made the mistake last week of saying the title of Hosea's wife's name, and I don't know if that's allowed on YouTube. So I'm going to. Rahab has the same job, but I'm not going to say it out loud. It's unsavory work. We'll leave it at that.
Yep.
But again, basic idea of this is Joshua chapter 2. Joshua sends spies into Jericho, and King of Jericho's not too happy about this. He learns that spies are there, but Rahab, this woman in the city, she hides the spies, basically keeping them safe. And then when the King of Jericho's men, come knocking on her door, she, basically covers for them, saying, "Oh yeah, they went that way." So that kind of thing. And so they go off, and the Israelites are kept safe in that moment. Which again, it kind of ties into that doing for your enemy sort of thing, kind of going the extra mile in that aspect. But it also kind of reminds me of the charitable aspect of kindness. The being willing to give something, to someone in that aspect.
Yeah. And something that sticks out about Rahab in particular is kind of in the same vein as like Abraham a little bit.
Sure.
Where it's that God-fearing, something's different about you.
Yeah.
I'm going to help. Even though if I'm found, help me.
Yeah.
And even Rahab says, remember me. Kind of.
Well, there's even the line, because I was reading through the Joshua 2 today, and there's a line I have it pulled up. She says something. Where is it?
I can't tell you where it is.
It's somewhere in here. I'm trying to skim for it, but it's. Oh yeah. So before the spies, lay down. Again, this is Joshua chapter 2, verse 8. Verse 8 through, I'll just read through 11. So before the spies lay down for the night, she went up to the roof and said to them, "I know that the Lord has given you this land, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us. so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up water in the Red Sea for when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the two kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted in fear, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below. So it's even this, this fear of, what, could happen. Because then she goes on to say in verse 12, now be kind to my family, show kindness to as I've shown kindness to you. So there is this aspect of fear from her, obviously.
Well, and it's different than like physical fear.
Sure, yeah.
It's more of like a supernatural fear.
Yeah. And again, she points out the different things that, God has done for the Israelites, as, I don't know if the right word is retribution for them. Again, pointing out, the Red Sea and all that. So yeah, it's that supernatural fear aspect, but
yeah, good or kind or whatever. No, kidding.
Good's next week, Brandon.
Good next week.
All right. As we awkwardly figure out what we're going to talk about next.
Anyway, what's something that you can think of for this that maybe other people wouldn't necessarily think of?
So again, we talked about the distinction between kindness and niceness, but I also feel like kindness and love are very similar.
Yeah.
Or often,
well, they're definitely connected.
But again, I think there's a distinction there that I kind of want to touch on a little bit.
Okay.
So, hello, Gmail.
Squirrel.
Yikes.
Just post a squirrel just randomly run across the screen and then edit.
Just the editing that may or may not be happening.
The Gmail that runs across the screen.
It's a squirrel, but then you Photoshop it like the Gmail envelope on it.
No, it's the tail coming out of the envelope.
Why is the squirrel in my mail, man?
Packing it in.
Express mail. What were we talking about?
Kindness, duh. Couldn't you tell?
I legitimately have I lost my train of thought. Again.
It's about love. Different, like, similarity yet differences of love.
Yeah. I had somewhere I was going with that.
Please be patient with us. As we learned last week. This is just gonna go up as is, you get to just watch us melt in fear.
Well, I'm melting.
in the fear of, oh man, we don't know what we're gonna talk about because it just went right past our brain cells.
Yeah, I got nervous and just didn't know where I was going with it. Because it's as you said, they're definitely connected. I was just talking with my coworker about this yesterday, and we had a really good conversation about it, but now I can't recall anything we actually said.
That's not good. Kindness, like, obviously, I keep wanting to bring up good because there's such a tie-in, but I also want to save stuff for next week or the next time that you see the video, I guess, for goodness, because I don't want to cover everything now.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
you want to cover everything.
I also have no idea what else to talk about for kindness. So
maybe we just be kind to the viewer and spare them.
Oh man, we're having a ball.
I'm having
And
a ball.
the squirrel has the mail, but we're having a ball. Anyway, we might as well just wrap up this video.
Cut the feed. Cut the feed.
So,
Well,
yeah,
guys, thank you again for joining us. Again, maybe
we'd also love to hear your comments down below for what your
definition
of
is,
goodness
and
or
kindness.
for last. Well, I mean, you could put up
Do all of it.
Do all of it. So you can put your definition for kindness down below, or you can put for next week or whenever the next video is for goodness. Yeah.
Also,
Do that. We'd love to see them. We'd love to interact with you guys.
Yeah. And then, also if you're feeling up to it, please tell us where the squirrel is sending our mail. It's very concerning.
Yeah, it's gone. That squirrel just up and left.
I'm awaiting a very important package.
So your sanity.
Duh.
Well, on that note, I think it's good time to end. So we'll catch you guys
On the flippity flop.
Yep.
Find my squirrel.